Welcome back to our A1 event. So our next guest is going to be Sandra Åberg. She's right here sitting next to us, actually. So Sandra, how are you doing tonight?
Good.
Great.
It's fun to be here.
I heard that you tested our A1 somewhere very exotic. I think it was in Italy. Where was that? So can you tell us more about it?
That was in Italy, in Tuscany. And so I had the pleasure of bringing it with me. So that was lots of fun, and I'll show you much more in a bit.
Then we're just looking forward.
Yeah. So, yeah, my name is Sandra Åberg, and Åberg, actually. Thank you guys so much for having me here. It's lots of fun to be here today. And it was fun to hear all the technical stuff from Patrick. I think that's like amazing. He's really, really talented with that. So I wish he could be here with us. And I look forward so much to seeing all the video stuff soon. So don't go away. I wanted to start out with just saying that the new A1 really, really impressed me. And I think there's a big disclaimer here, because I'm really not a technical person. I'm really usually not very impressed with gear, or for me it's always been more of a tool to get me to where I want it to go. So most of the people that know me also know that I've always said this thing, like, I can shoot with anything, doesn't matter. Give me anything to shoot with and I'll shoot with it. And I have to say that that has kind of changed a bit. I think that it's been like a very eye-opening experience for me to try this new camera and to see what's possible. Makes me feel a bit like a dinosaur, but I'd like to start with looking back on the past.
I also remember that when I handed the A1 to you, we didn't get it go through a camera. I just gave it to you and then you were gone.
Yeah, it's like hit and run kind of situation.
Yeah, and you prepared some amazing things for us, actually, so yeah.
Okay, well, so I think looking back, I started photography 15 years ago now. And of course, back then it was DSLR and a very different world. I also like to shoot film still. So that's a very different way of working, really. And the work that I used to do was the same as it is today, but it had a lot of struggle, because to get the shots that you see here, you're really relying on your camera to be able to focus. And in the past, that was my biggest struggle. I think it's safe to say that that was really the stressful part of my work most of the time. And I did come home with a lot of blurry images, but also a lot of great ones. So I really think that in my style and what's defined me has always been like shooting really, really, like I usually shoot at between 1.2 to 1.8 or something like that, and that's what I've always done and what I've always enjoyed, which is taking me to amazing places, been able to shoot for great magazines as well, and around the world shooting weddings and fashion work. And this is all shot on the old cameras. Then I think a big struggle becomes that when you can't always rely on your cameras, you as a person also become a bit insecure. Maybe it's like a female thing, I'm not sure, but like truly that is what represents you, and when you can't rely on that, it becomes a bit problematic. I know that I've shown this image before for people that have known me, and this shot was like a super stressful situation. We had to get this shot on time. We had very little time and the light was going, and I was struggling to get this shot to make it. So the switch for me was terrifying, because you know you can perform with this gear and you're sort of not technical in the sense that you don't really care a lot about the gear. This is how I felt in the past, and then you make a switch to a completely new system. And for me that switch was magical because it really took me to become really confident with what I could perform, because when the cameras, and this is switching to Sony mirrorless, it's about, I believe it's about 2.5 years ago now.
Yeah, roughly. Yes.
Yeah.
Was that your first mirrorless camera? The
Yeah,
Sony?
it was. It's
Okay.
my very first mirrorless camera, and it was a big switch, and I was terrified that I couldn't like make the same images that I could before, because of course that switch is massive coming from both film and the DSLR. But these are all new pictures, and there's a little note in the bottom where you can see what it's shot at. For those of you that are interested, it's sometimes there. But it really made me realize that like my quote had always been that I was not going to rely, you could give me anything and I'd shoot with anything, and it wasn't important for me what I shot at. And I realized that that was no longer true, because it made me a better photographer. It allowed me to be much more confident with what I performed, and it truly changed the game for me. So here's me with a Sony camera on the top of a mountain.
Looking good.
Yeah.
And I think the switch also allowed me then to become more creative and sort of go after what I wanted to do. I always had this dream of doing underwater photography, and in that, it allowed me to sort of be able to do that as well and create. So my first Sony wedding, this is the big moment in which you're terrified, really, because you're showing up at a wedding and you have brand new gear that you have, of course, worked with, but that you have a little bit of butterflies in your stomach to do this. So we were 3 photographers, all with Sony gear, shooting this wedding, and it was my very first Sony wedding, which I'll never forget because it was quite special for me. And also, like, you're wondering, can I come home with this? What about the editing? Can I make it match? You know, is it going to still be my style, or will my style completely change from changing cameras? But I really think that the cameras made that possible. Like, a switch to mirrorless cameras made it incredibly easy, even for someone not super interested in the technical part. I forced myself to read the manual, which took me 4 days because I kept falling asleep. But I think at the end of the day, the camera just performed for me and allowed me to still keep creating. And that, for me, was really what was essential, that I could create these images that I always had, now with this brand new gear, and still with my signature style.
Yeah, amazing. And if we look at this wedding in particular, it's not like a typical Saturday wedding.
No. Also, it was a bit terrifying to bring mirrorless cameras to your first biggest wedding of the year, really.
Yeah.
So, but it was fun, and it shows that the camera performs for you and still allows you that creativity to actually really go above and beyond. And I think still today, 2.5 years later, it's probably one of my favorite weddings still, which is fun to look back at.
Yeah.
And sort
Well
of,
done.
yeah.
Yes.
Then to move forward to today and the A1, which is why we're all here, it's really cool. Again, I thought, well, it's a new camera, it's cool, all good.
I'll make it work.
I'll make it work. Let me try it in Tuscany. We're going there. I've set up this beautiful shoot with a lot of talented people, which always gives you a bit of this like, I hope I can perform, you know, because you only have one shot, and there's a lot of people. They came from Milan, they came from everywhere to kind of help us do this shoot. So it wasn't a little deal, it was kind of a big deal, and I was going to shoot this all on the new Sony A1. And I thought, well, we'll see how we go. And I guess I'm someone that just kind of jumps into the deep end like that in general.
And maybe to add something, was not only your first time with A1, it was also your first time with another equipment.
It was the love of my life.
The new love of your life.
The new one. Yeah, so I also had the 50, the new 50 1.2 with me, which was amazing. Oh, we'll come back to that later. But the two of them is what created most of these images. But I think, first of all, I'll start you guys off with a little video from the shoot. I wanted to be an honest representation of what life is like for me as a photographer. I think for a lot of photographers. I've been fortunate in my career that I am where I am today, but I've also seized a lot of opportunities and done a lot of things specifically for reaching a goal. I want to take you with me to this beautiful Borgo Santo Pietro shoot in the hills of Tuscany, and you get to see the behind the scenes on working on a shoot there for the new A1. One of those things is absolutely switching to mirrorless Sony cameras, and now with the A1 it hasn't just helped me to reach my goals as a photographer, it has also enabled me to be much more creative with my work.
Love it. Try to straighten your back a little bit. So a little bit up with your back. Good. Awesome.
It's fast and flawless in its performance, and it allows me to dream up what I want to create and not just worry so much about the hows. So switching to the Sony A1 has been a huge game changer for me.
Yes. Go.
Yep. So that was a nice video, Sandra.
We're back live now again.
Yeah, so that was the video from the shoot we did in Tuscany. It was a really, really fun and cool experience, and we shot it all at Borgo Santo Pietro in Tuscany, which is this beautiful, beautiful estate. The owners are actually Danish, which is a bit of a fun thing. But so all the photos were shot there, and I really wanted to try to create different sceneries. So when you do a shoot like this, you want to make everybody happy and try to make sure that we have all the different angles and things that are interesting to the different people. So we did a bit of a spa session, which was because they have a brand called Sea to Skin, so we did that as well. And then we did some more sort of wedding fashion editorial things for the shoot. And also I had brought a few different dresses, so we wanted to make sure that we got through all the different dresses, and it was really like a great experience overall. And also having the A1 just made life really easy. You know, I was a bit worried and a bit curious to see how it performed, and again I always thought like the gear doesn't really matter, and I have to say that there's not much I can say other than it does actually matter more and more. And I guess I was a bit of a dinosaur thinking that, oh well, and when you shoot with old cameras, no, maybe gear doesn't matter that much, but when you shoot with a camera like the A1, it really does matter because it really outperforms you at times. I think, and it just allows you that like security to show up and know that you can perform because the camera can get the shot for you. And that was really kind of fascinating for me, to say the least. Yeah, and again, I'm just showing a few photos from the session just so you guys can see it.
Amazing lights.
So the camera over-delivered.
It over-delivered. Yes, it does.
Yes.
Surely does. And I like to stress it a bit and shoot backlit, like, because that's just my style. So in general, I shoot a lot of photos backlit, and a lot of it is how I like. I also like to put something a little bit in front of the lens so you get that kind of blurry haziness. And it works really well for me, and the camera can definitely handle whatever you put at it. But we'll see it a little bit later where I kind of show the different things that I thought was cool. More from like a creative kind of view than the more technical view that Patrick kind of gave you guys. So I think I explain things with feeling, and I've been told this, and sometimes this frustrates people greatly, especially my partner, but I think that's just how I, as an artist, like that's how I express myself. So that's really what I want to kind of show, but of course, like we all know the amazing capabilities. Hung told us about it earlier today, so that's not really what I want to focus on. I'd rather try to explain to you guys with like normal words why the Sony A1 is an awesome camera.
Cool.
On my, what I think. So this is just what I'll go through. So you guys will have a little quick preview of this. So the upgrade of it, the picture quality, a super fast camera, the autofocus, the eye tracking, and the silent. Even when it's, you know, even when it's not on silent shooting, it's really, really quiet. And then it lets me be creative. But more about that. So overall, like when I was basically given this camera as I'm like driving to Italy out the door. And the first thing that I noticed was, wow, this is really sort of more of a, you can't edit it out, more of a real camera, but it had that heavier real camera feel that I was used to from the olden days, which I really had sort of missed a bit, like that really bigger grip and a bit of a tiny bit heavier, I believe, no, but really something that to me felt like more real and back to sort of what I came from, yet with the same amazing capabilities that the Sony cameras had given me. So that was like the first thing that I really noticed.
So it is welcoming with the bigger grip.
I really like it.
Oh, nice.
I enjoy that a lot. I think even the buttons on top made it like a lot easier to deal with than always having to go into the menu. That was like a huge upgrade for me. I really enjoyed that.
Yeah, it's like I know that the Tokyo Japanese people have been really looking into overseas about the professional photographers. What do they like about a camera? Because in the old days we were only looking into the the local market, you know, in Japan, and the smaller the better. If you can save 1 inch, whoa, it's amazing. But they realized that in the European market that many photographers would like to have like a good camera feeling, a grip.
Good
so
grip.
Yeah, which makes sense. That's at least what I really enjoyed about it. I think that made it feel more sturdy and real to me, and it also had a better grip to hold it. So that's certainly something I really, really enjoyed. Then there's the amazing picture quality, and I think it's safe to say that this is a huge, amazing upgrade. It also depends, I guess, of what kind of photographer you are and what you shoot. Some people I've heard like say it's too much or too, you know. But for me, also shooting a lot of prints and doing wall prints now, that's like a amazing, amazing quality. I don't like to be limited by my gear. I like to limit myself if I don't need it, rather than feel that I'm limited by the gear, which coming from shooting film, you can often feel a bit limited by the gear rather than than that. Yeah. So for me, the picture quality is a huge, great thing about the camera. Also for doing big prints. I mean, this is a new world. There's going to be needs for bigger prints, even bigger, you know. And I think that's super, super cool that they're following the trends and sort of what's going on. And yeah, of course, it takes a bit more storage, but we're photographers, so we're used to that by now, I think. At least for me, that's not something that I would at all qualify as anything but amazing. So the next thing that I wanted to point out is the fast autofocus. And for me, that is really, really important. Again, talking about the old cameras and the dinosaurs of the age, you know, it's been really fun to kind of shoot with a camera that keeps up with you and that you don't have to worry about so much. And it has made me feel more secure as a photographer because I know I can perform. I'm not culling a lot of images either, a lot of blurred images. I'm not having all these stressful situations. So yeah, I think that was really, really something great about it. And then shooting weddings, I think oftentimes all of a sudden the bride decides to throw a bouquet and you're in a panic in a dark room or something like that. And it's, I mean, when you can rely on your camera, you're just, you feel much more confident walking into any situation. And as a wedding photographer, I think, then I definitely always walk into situations that are very unknown.
True.
So I wanted to play with, I had the kids and I wanted to play with my bonus daughter, which was really fun to just kind of see what all the hype was all about. The 30 frames per second, and I thought, well, let's put this to the test. So I got her with a mouthful of water and to spin around and see what it did.
And
There
do
we
what
go.
kids do best, playing.
Play!
Oh.
Nice.
And again, not being super technical, not being into these things as what I would have categorized myself as. I was really impressed and sort of just amazed. So we spent basically a whole day doing this on the swings and on everything else. So again, the technical aspects really allow you to do it if you need it. Then you might not need it, but for a thing like throwing a bouquet, this could be an amazing place to use it for a wedding. I mean, there's lots of other things fast sports photographers for sure could use it, but I think in weddings you can as well, and even fashion. And it allows you to be creative, because now all of a sudden you can capture those moments being creative and doing the things that you love to do, not limited by, by your camera and gear. The next thing that is a definite plus is the eye tracking, and I'm sure Hung can tell us more about exactly why it's a lot better, but I find it to be a lot better
Yes.
already, you know?
It is. It is a combination of the new sensor and also the powerful processor we have embedded in the camera. So that's why that it can actually work. Like the A9 II, which is a very, very fast camera, that works with 60 times a second when it comes to autofocus. But the A1 Alpha 1 works 120 times per second to calculate the autofocus, which means it can really, really nail the focus on the eye all the time.
Yeah, yeah, and that's what you see. I mean, it was so fun. Like, we played with this flower in front of this model's head, and we're just kind of trying to make her stress the camera. Because I'm like, okay, well, I'm here trying out the new camera, so we might as well put it to the test. And I really felt like that was a fun, like, she's super backlit. This is in Tuscany. The sun is quite harsh this time of year. and I'm shooting it with the sun right behind her, all backlit. I have some stuff in front of my lens. I mean, and she keeps moving, and she moves the flower in front of her face, and I didn't have a single image where her eye wasn't in focus, which is just, to me, next level. You know, because usually, I mean, also for coming home and culling, and you have to zoom in and check that it's in focus, and always the shot that you think is the greatest, the eye isn't in focus. In the past, that happened like tons of times, which was so frustrating.
But also that now you can use the big aperture lenses without
Yes.
being worried.
Yes, exactly. When you shoot it, when you like to shoot at 1.2, I mean, then it is that you're really worried if you don't have this eye tracking that works.
That's a good tool.
Yeah, it is. And it's fun though, because that's how I love to shoot, and it really allows you to shoot like that now. Then I think it's also safe to say that it does amazing in low light. We had to just take it and try it as well. And by the end of the day, I wanted to shoot this. We had a second dress, and I realized that it was getting dark, but I wanted the sunset outside, so I compromised everything to get the sunset outside. I said, all right, we'll do the last dress inside, knowing that it was going to be dark, and knowing that usually that is not my preferred decision. Also liking to shoot like really light and airy. It didn't really fit what I was aiming for. But that's still what we did, and I think that, again, the gear does matter. So here's just a shot that I wanted to take, and she's moving the dress, which makes it really beautiful and flowy, and you can see the original image next to it.
Yeah, so the image to the right is the original, and
Yes.
to the left, okay, so
Yeah.
you were able to push the dynamic range quite high.
Yes, exactly. And it was
Okay.
It's amazing.
and create what I wanted. So I had this vision in my, like I really had this idea of what I wanted it to look like. I even kind of liked the really dark image of these.
Me too, actually.
I was like, maybe I'll prefer that. But just to go with my editing style, I thought it was cool to show it like that, and also show how much you can bring back,
Yeah.
which is quite impressive.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah. And then last but not least, but not the very least, is the silent. Like, even not being on silent mode, it's incredibly silent, which I really think is a huge advantage. For intimate moments like this, for me to not have a camera make a sound matters profoundly. I like to shoot with the cameras usually on silent, but not always. Just now with the A1, I felt like I didn't even need to, because it was so quiet in and of itself. But I think when I'm shooting, I like to connect with my subject, and when they hear the click, it kind of makes them constantly aware of them being photographed. So I prefer if it's silent and they don't hear when I'm clicking. Also, then I can make them laugh and take the photo and sort of interact with them more without them really being aware of that clicking sound that really kind of makes it more like the old days where the model would move at the click. So that for me has been amazing, and these new cameras perform so well. Also, the silent mode now doesn't do the banding.
Right.
So that's like a huge upgrade as well with
It
the
is
A1.
big upgrade, yes.
Yeah. So I think what I want to say, like overall with the A1, is the mirrorless cameras are all great, but the A1 I feel like has really given me that freedom to create really what I envision. So as creatives, we have these ideas and we kind of dream up our shot before we even take it, and the security of knowing that you can perform even in low light, you know, any kind of situation. If you want to blow this image up to make it a poster for Borgo Santo Pietro, we can do that, you know. We're not limited, and I think for me personally, that freedom of just creating and not having limitations on what I do is like a game changer. Really, really it is. This is just, I think, the last image from this amazing shoot in Tuscany. I think what I would like to just end on this note with the A1 is that it's a no compromise camera. Like, this really allows you to create, and this is what we're here to do. At least that's what I'm here to do. And it allows me to play and just not have to worry about all these things that I in the past spent so much time and energy worrying about, that Sony now has come up to like make it fail-proof for us.
Okay.
So then we can play, you know, not worry so much about the rest, and let the technique be taken care of, you know? Let us be taken care of and play. So
you
that
can
would be
say,
my end note on that.
with the new cameras, with all the technologies, many people might be afraid of that, but as long as it's technologies that can make you more creative and feel confident and give you the shots that you want, that is beautiful.
Yeah, I think so. I think you shouldn't be scared of all that technical information, because it's just knowledge, you know, and you can learn all that, but it truly makes you able to perform better and also create better in terms of that. Yeah. So
Very nice.
and then we wanted to I just kind of wanted to go over, we're all a bit of gear nerds, so we want to know a bit of the gear. So I wanted to go over my equipment. This is before traveling. This is when we still were flying airplanes. So I tried to make everything fit into one bag, which is almost possible these days, which is amazing also because the gear is truly much smaller than in the past. And I put it on my back because on airplanes you don't want to be stopped with a rolling thing and have all the hassle of that. So this is what I bring with me, not always the underwater gear, at least not the big one. The small Sony underwater camera case I usually always bring with me.
Yeah. Is that a Contax as a Rolleiflex you have there?
It's a Rolleiflex, so
Oh, you
there's a
bring
bit
that
of
with you as
film.
well? Oh.
Sometimes, it depends. The old school film still has something
Yes,
magical.
definitely. The look.
The look, yeah. Which you can now really, a lot of people think that I shoot only film. In the industry in the wedding industry, in the fine art industry, people believe that I still shoot only film, which I find as a compliment, you know, because you can still make your images look like film. And it always makes me kind of giggle when people say, well, you should just mainly film, right? And I think, yeah, no, but okay.
Yeah.
You know, I think it's the look and the feel of the images that makes that really cool. But so this is my gear and equipment that I have with me all the time, pretty much. And then I thought, I mean, I don't feel like there's a need to read it out. You guys can read. But I wanted to go over some of my favorite lenses, because this is what we photographers like to ask each other. What's your favorite lens? We've actually already been asking each other. It's like, what's your favorite lens? Oh, how come? So we agree on a few, but not all.
I think it's like chef, they always ask, what is your favorite knife?
Exactly, yeah, that's true. So for me, the 80mm has been one of my go-to lenses, and I'm gonna. This is also an image shot with that. Again, this is from my first Sony wedding that you guys saw earlier, and something I like to put stuff in the foreground, and it really allows me to play more and get more of that softness. So yeah, the 85 has been my go-to for a lot of my time shooting. It has slightly changed now with the new love, but but this was my go-to. I also like to be close to my subject. I like to connect with them, and I feel like a lot of what I'm getting, I need to be within a few meters of my subject to really be able to connect and create what I want to create. So that for me is really important. Here's another image shot with the 85. Which is a bit further away, but still you're still close enough to be not within COVID distance, I guess. And then another favorite one, because it's little and compact and it can travel with me easily everywhere, is the 55. And I'm impressed with this little thing that really can perform well. So that makes it to my favorite list for sure. Here's another image shot with that at the top of a mountain. And when you're climbing mountains with couples and gears and things, you prefer small lenses, and sometimes it's nice to know that you have like a really small, great lens with you. And for that, this one definitely gets it to my top list. Then I also have the 16 to 35. I like to shoot those wide landscape photos with the subjects in it, whether it's fashion or weddings or any kind of stuff like that. And I feel it works really well at the end of the day to have something a little bit further away, because I'm always very up close and personal. I feel like you can't really get away with only that. You also need to be able to show the scenery, because I'm also usually in really beautiful places.
Yeah,
and you want to include that as well.
to show where you are.
Yeah, yeah. So the 16 to 35, I like to always have with me, and to create those kind of like scenery images of where I am. And for nature photography, which I enjoy a lot, I think it's super great lens too. Then we have an old favorite. It's mean to say. No, but the 50, the old 50 1.4, there it is. Here it is. I'm sorry, but it's no longer my favorite. But it really has great performance. I mean, it's still a great lens. I've shot a lot of photos with it. It's taken some of my favorite photos actually with the Sony setup, so I can't at all say anything bad, and it still makes it to my favorite list. And it truly is one amazing lens that I really enjoy using. And again, it's for me, it's about getting up and close, you know, but also being able to take shots like this. I think it's kind of cool that you still use that lens for that. But we're not going to dwell on that one, because now my number one lens.
I think people know what it is.
I think you know by now. It is the 50 1.2. I truly feel like it's made for me. I think Sony must have made a lens specifically for me. No, but this is, it's just everything that I was waiting for from Sony. It really was. And shooting at 1.2 with the A1 now,
It's a dream.
I mean, it's a dream. It's the dream team, really it is, that lets me create these kind of images. And that's what I love to do. Like this, I could do all day long, all the time. And that's really what it allows you to do. So I think it's like the perfect match. You have the A1 and this one. I don't know if the other lenses get to come even anymore.
Despite being 1.2, compared with the 50 1.4,
Yeah.
size-wise, it's
It's a tiny bit. Where do we have the other one? Do you have it there? The other one's a tiny bit heavier.
yes,
Yeah.
because it's a 1.2.
It has a lot, but it's not. I don't think that matters at all. Like to me, it's the performance, and it outperforms this one, in my opinion. Cut.
But I can actually tell you that both lenses weigh the same.
They do weigh
Yes,
the same.
778 gram.
There you go. All right. I thought the other one weighed
no,
more.
No,
So
they
it's
both
the
weigh
same.
the same. Yes, same
She's
size,
a little bit
same
biased
weight.
now because she loves it.
Oh, no, I'm biased. It's just because I love you. No, it's not even fair. No, but no, that is my favorite lens. Of all, if I can only bring one to a deserted island, that's the one I'll bring.
One.
I'll keep mine.
Yes, you can keep it. Yeah, so I think you guys also ask any questions you want. If you have any specific questions, I'm happy to go over it. I think we do that at the very end.
Yeah.
So that was a little bit about my thoughts on the A1. I think is the bit, you know, I think it's important also that you get like the female feely version of these cameras, because I think a lot of males or females, it doesn't matter, but can feel a bit intimidated by the big specs and sort of numbers of cameras. And it kind of like maybe doesn't really make you feel what this is really about. At least that was always my feeling in the past. So I wasn't really impressed with big numbers and 50 megapixels, this and that. But it truly does make a difference. It truly has changed how I work, but only changed it for the better. It's only really changed it to become more easy to create the work that I aspire to do.
Yeah, that's what matters. That
Yeah.
it's for the better.
Exactly, for sure. So thank you so much
Thank
for
you,
having
Sandra.
me here today.
It was amazing. Yeah, mind blowing.
So,
Mind-blowing
Andrea,
pictures. Mind-blowing pictures.
yes,
Thank you,
amazing.
guys.
I have a last question for you.
Yeah.
What's your go-to editing software?
Editing software, well, usually and until now I've used mainly Lightroom and sometimes Photoshop. But then I've had the pleasure of trying to play with the Capture One, and so it's still ongoing. I'm still testing it out.
I
and
heard you gave them a challenge.
I did give them a challenge.
You did?
I was like, let me see what you guys can do with these photos from Tuscany. So
So then after the break, after 5 minutes, we will watch the session and see how they did with your challenge.
yeah, I'm super curious to see how they did.
And remember to send your questions to Sandra, that she will reply after everything is done here in the Q&A session. Thank you so much. We will see you in 5 minutes. Welcome back, everyone. Now we will go and watch the session with Capture One and Sandra's raw files.
Hi everybody, and thanks for joining me for this short session and a look at Capture One. So my name's David, I'm working with Capture One, and in this session I'm going to show you an edit taken in some of the Capture One tools on one of Sandra's photos taken with the new Sony A1, of course. So this is how it looks straight out of camera, and what I hope to do, as close as I can, is to roughly match to this edit that I did earlier. And this is based on Sandra's particular editing style for this particular shoot. So I can't necessarily replicate it 100%, but I will do my best to get as close as possible. So as I said, this is how it looks straight out of the camera. So what I'm going to do is throw in some basic edits in terms of contrast, tonal range, brightness, and then we can look to working with layers to do some skin tone work, remove a couple of blemishes, and enhance the eyes separately as well. So let's get started. All right, first of all, let's brighten up the photo so it's closer to this final look that we're going for. So I'll add in some exposure. Let's go roughly 1 stop. Add a bit more contrast as well around there. And just take the saturation down a few points as well. And white balance wise, let's bump up the tint a little bit too, just to get my base look in, if you like. Now, because of those changes, we just need to be mindful of the highlights and shadows, and actually reduce the contrast to some extent by aligning or bringing the brightness of the highlights down and opening up the shadows a bit. So this is where the high dynamic range tool comes into play. So let's deal with the shadows first of all. So I'll open up the shadows around here, and then also do the same with the blacks. Now the difference between the blacks and the shadows is that the blacks target, if you like, the very darkest colors. So if we reset that for a minute, we can see if we just pull that back and forth, it's just this area of her hair, if you like. So just those darkest points. So let's lift those up, and the shadows will have, if you like, a greater overall effect. If we pull this one around, you can see it's also affecting the trees in the background as well. So let's open it up a little bit to around there. Okay, now for the highlights, we want quite a nice bright fresh tone, so I'm actually going to open up the highlights a bit, but being mindful that we don't want to clip any data. And it's the same story with the highlights and the whites. The highlights deal with roughly like the top third of the histogram around here, and the whites is just the brightest parts. So I can counteract what I did with the highlights just by bringing the whites down to something like this. So you can see as I drag that back and forth, the exact effect it's having on the dress. So let's go to something like that. So keeping it nice, bright and fresh, but importantly not losing any detail. And then the final thing to do exposure wise is just a little trick with the curve. I'm going to grab the shadow end of the curve or try and grab the shadow end and just lift this up a little bit. So that will just soften all the contrast off further. Now you might ask, well then what's the point of adding some contrast in the contrast slider? But if we just click and hold on contrast, you can see what it's doing. It's just giving like, you know, a bit more bite, but we've got that nice little handy trick of lifting up this curve point as well to something like that. It's probably about right. As I said, I'll try and do as much as I can to match. Now that finishes, if you like, the toning side of things. So let's see what we can do in the color tool tab. Now I've been working in the exposure tool tab. You see if I hover up here, we get an indication of the name of each tool tab. So Capture One divides up the tools into different tool tabs. All of this is highly customizable, by the way. So if you want to move the palettes around, have the tools on the right, you can pretty much create the workspace that makes sense to you. Okay, so let's look at some color side of things. Now we've got the basic color editor and the advanced color editor. The difference between these two is that basic has some predefined color patches, so 8 I believe here, yep, and 1 for the whole spectrum. Advanced allows you to grab a picker and really dial in the exact color range that you want to have. But for this demo, we can use the basic color editor, no problem, and then we can get into the skin tone edit as well. So first of all, for the basic color editor, let's just go through the first 4 color patches, reds, oranges, yellows, greens, and so on, and just tweak them a little bit to align with Sandra's style. So for the reds, that's pretty much, I mean, the reddest part of this shot is her lips, I'm guessing. Let's just zoom in a little bit so we can see what's happening. Let's just push that hue closer to, so you'll see if I go in that direction or this direction, you can see the change that is applied. So let's just push that in this direction, roughly probably around there. Now to the next patch, I'm just going to bump up the saturation a bit. We can see that's just warming up the skin a little bit. This patch is targeted towards that, so around there, or I should say adding saturation. Moving on again, let's pull the hue over, just looking at the trees in the background. You can see how it's pulling the hue around, so let's bump the hue towards here, okay. And then finally, let's do the same with the hue. You'll see as I move the hue back and forth, I think I was going for this kind of look yesterday, or earlier I should say, and then let's take the saturation down a little as well. Okay, so zooming back out, if we want to preview what we've done with our color edits, if I hold the option key down and click on the reset button, this one here, that would just give me a temporary reset. So that's before and after, like so. Now we're going to come back to the skin tone tool, but to finish off our color side of things, we can also use the color balance tool. Now an important difference between these two is that the color editor is designed to pick a color and tweak the appearance of it. The color balance tool is more designed for like an overall color grading creative look. So for our color balance tool, if I go to the master and grab this central point, wherever I pull this, this will just add that color tint to the whole photo. So I'm just going to go for a little bit of subtle extra warmth, not too much, just around there. And then if we go to the three-way tab, this splits up the shadows, midtones and highlights so they can have their own individual toning. Now I don't have to do a great deal here. Let's go towards the shadows just to add a slight coolness. Now if these are a bit small to work with, you can drag the tool out and make it bigger, or each of these tabs you can play with it individually. So let's just make sure that's not too strong. So that's just going to add a little bit of teal coolness into the shadows, and then midtones, let's just go slightly up. We can also grab this one here for fine tuning, and should you wish, you can also play around with the density of each of those areas, but I'm going to leave those as is because we handled that pretty well in the exposure tool tab. Okay, so again, option click on our reset button, we can see before and after. It's subtle, it's just kicked a little bit of warmth in here. Now the final thing that we want to deal with is what we can do with layers. So let's zoom in a touch. And if you're familiar with the concept of layers in Photoshop or Affinity Photo, of course, then it's a very similar concept in Capture One. You can apply adjustments to different layers, and you create the layers by drawing some kind of mask, making a selection. So you saw the basic color editor over here. So now we can show you some magic of the skin tone tab of the color editor. And this has an important additional bank of tools called uniformity. And these hope to align any differing skin tone. We all have differing skin tone on our face, and the skin tone tool is just a really easy way to pull that all together. Now I'm going to do this on a layer because we want to target the adjustments just on our skin. We don't want to affect, you know, any of the background or our lip tone or anything like that. So let's zoom in. Now her skin is pretty even, but there's just a slight difference around here on the cheeks. So I'm going to start by making a new filled adjustment layer. And the reason for filling my layer is that I first want to dial in the adjustment to make sure it's working well for this photo. So if I press M on my keyboard for mask, then you see there's a mask over the entire shot. So any edit that I do now is going to show up on the whole photo. And then I can either erase bits of the mask or draw it back in where I need it. So first of all, let's grab our skin tone color picker, and we're going to pick our desirable skin tone. So I'm going to go for somewhere down here like so. Now Capture One gives me a little dot in the middle, which means that is my exact pick skin tone, and a range of all other skin tones that we hope to pull towards that point or transform to that skin tone. So I'm going to just make this range bigger to make sure we capture all the possible skin tones we want to align with our pick skin tone. Now under amount, these sliders will just change the appearance, much like they do in the basic and advanced tool tabs, of the pick color. So if I drag the saturation right down, then it's obviously going to desaturate her skin. Same for lightness, we can gradually change the lightness, but these are very subtle sliders. Now what the uniformity skin tone tool does here, as I said, is pull all the hue together into that picked point. So as I drag the hue across, then the big clue here is you saw her lips change color. So if I go back and pull that to the right, then you see now everything in this range is unified to that color. Now we don't want everything in that area to unify, but this helps us dial in our adjustment. So now saturation is aligned, and if I pulled lightness up, you would see it would flatten the photo off. So we need to be careful of that and not overdo it. Okay, so now I'm happy with the effect, and I was only really looking here to see what was happening. Let's turn our layer on off. So that's off and back on. So it's nicely aligned the skin tone here. Let's rename the layer so we know what it's doing. And as I said, filling that layer allowed me to visualize the adjustments, but now I want to target it in just the right spot, which is generally just, you know, around this area. So on my layer, I'm going to right click and say clear mask. So that's going to get rid of the mask, but leave my nicely executed adjustments. Then I can grab my brush, go onto my photo, right click to get up my brush parameters, and I'm going to make it big and nice and soft, and also have a low flow. And what this means is by having a low flow, as I brush back and forth, it will build up the adjustment slowly. So I can decide when I want to stop. So now if I just brush under here, like so, and around here, it will be happening super slowly. So you're not necessarily going to notice like a really fast change, if you like, and a bit up here. But what we can do is turn our layer on and off, and then you'll be able to see. So if I turn off skin tone, then you can see before, note the slight color shift, and then after, like so. Just brings it nicely back into line, like so. So let's stop with that there. If we've gone too far, we can always pull down the opacity as well and just blend in the previous look with our edited look. Now that process was, let's just open these up. That process was, or had a few steps. So I had to make my field layer, dial in the adjustments I wanted, and then brush in those adjustments. But that gave me the perfect end result, if you like, with plenty of finesse and the ability to stop and start and so on. Sometimes we don't need that level of finesse. And the benefit is that we've also got an accelerated way to quickly apply adjustments onto a layer via style brush. So let's show you a good example with her eyes. So I'm going to grab this style brush called Iris Enhance. As soon as I pick a style brush, it selects my brush cursor tool. Then I can go over onto my photo. Let's just go here. And then as I start brushing, you see a new layer is created automatically with the name of the style brush. And also any parameters that are saved as part of that style brush are also loaded. So not only does it create a layer and add in some adjustments for that layer, the brush is also preset as well, which is great. So brushing in Iris Enhance adds a bit of detail, bit of contrast, bit of saturation, as you can see, like so. Now that's probably gone a bit too far. If we turn off Iris Enhance, you can see before and after. But as I said, we can easily pull down the opacity and have anything from 0 effect to 100. So I'm going to go roughly something like that. Now the final layer that I want to create is just to do a little bit of cleanup. So if I zoom into 200%, so it's just easier for you and me to see, I'm going to grab our healing brush, the little sticking plaster. No need to make a layer. As soon as I go onto the photo and start to get rid of a spot, again, an automatic layer will be created. Capture One will find the source point and get rid of the spot. So if I just do a little bit of touch up here, her skin's pretty good, so not much work required. And also you don't want to watch me doing tons and tons of spotting, so it's just going to be a few little bits. And even on the hair there's that white spot, like so. If you feel that Capture One hasn't picked the right point, you can always pick up the source point and just drop it to a better spot. Now these little arrows that we see on the screen, they will show until you move your cursor off the screen, or you can right click, yep, and turn off display arrows if they're distracting. So let's just get rid of a couple of spots there, and then that will do. So let's zoom back out, and I think hopefully we're pretty much where we wanted to be compared to the earlier edit. So if we turn on before and after, that's how we came out of camera, and that's our final edit. If we zoom into 100%, then we can see similar thing happen. You can see the difference in tonal range, brighter, lower contrast, more muted colors, and so on. Nice alignment of the skin tone, cleaned up a couple of spots. We could of course do more. Check out the dress, make sure there's no rips, tears, and fix those as well. But that looks pretty good, and you can see the difference in her eyes as well. One thing we can always do after finishing an edit is always go back through your layers, turn each one on off, make sure that you haven't gone too far, pull the opacity down, which is a great retrospective way of limiting the edit. Check our Iris Enhance is pretty good, and then just our few healing spots that we made as well. Nice and simple. How does it compare to the earlier edit? Let's see. Oh, that one's a little bit stronger, so that one's pretty close. So what I've got is just a bunch of different variants you can see of testing. So this one was slightly more contrastier. This one compared to this one, actually not bad. Not a bad match at all. So that one went off the rails a bit, but this one is pretty close. So there we go. I hope you found that useful, or a brief insight into Capture One and some of the things you can do. We're very pleased to have support for the Sony A1 soon after it was announced. So if you do, or you're lucky enough to have a Sony A1, download the Capture One trial, 30-day trial. You can try out all the features and functionality that you've seen on your own photos. So just grab a few of your favorites and then see what's possible in Capture One. We've got plenty of learning resources in and around the app, as you might have seen. Just hover over a point of interest and there's a short explanation, and then some of them will also link you to a short tutorial as well. There's also the Learn button up here, which will open up a portal into our Learning Hub where you can find a bunch more resources as well. So again, thanks for joining me today, and hope to see you online again in the future. Take care. Bye now.